Whether you're an owner or you are a supervisor, whatever the case may be, do not wear nice shoes on the job site. What's going on, folks? In this video, we're going to be discussing boots versus sneakers for work. We're going to discuss the pros and cons of each, as well as some best practices for foot protection on the job site. If this is your first time watching, welcome to Renos for Pros and Joes. On this channel, we do renovation tip and strategy videos, as well as hands-on product tool and gear reviews. If you're interested in renovation, remodeling, repair, home maintenance, or real estate, then subscribe, because this channel and the content you will find here is designed specifically for you. As we get started today, the first type of shoe that we're going to discuss is going to be a boot. We're going to discuss a general purpose boot, as well as boots that are designed for water repellents. So let's start with a general purpose boot. Here is an example of a general purpose boot. Generally speaking, a general purpose boot is going to be designed to do several things. The first thing it's going to be designed to do is protect the feet against falls and drops on your toes, as well as anything that can be hit on the overall top of your foot. So that's going to include the toe box, as well as the sides of the shoe here, as well as having a solid sole on the bottom that is slip resistant. And an added bonus for a boot is going to be its ability to prevent penetrations through the sole from sharp objects such as nails and metal and glass. And so these are the three main things that most people are going to be looking for in a work boot. Now, you have work boots that are made with steel toe and those that are not, as well as boots that are also made with a composite toe. Now, this is a steel toe work boot, and with this particular brand, they also make a boot that is a soft toe. I always err on the side of caution and go with the steel toe, just because it adds a bit more protection for the boot and gives me a little bit more peace of mind. Now, with regards to looking at work boots, another added benefit is going to be comfort. If you're doing a general search online for work boots, one of the things that you're going to really quickly realize is that many people can check most of those boxes with protection for the top of the foot and protection for the sole and non-slipping sole. But one of the things that's more difficult to find is going to be a boot that is comfortable to be worn for long periods of time. And so that is another box that we're trying to check. So when we're talking about work boots, you've got basically three different categories of work boots. You've got a soft toe work boot, you've got a steel toe, and you've got a composite toe. Now, the soft toe is going to give you the least amount of protection and is generally going to be the lightest weight boot. You move up from there into a steel toe from a price point standpoint, which is going to give you a lot more protection, but the trade-off is going to be that the boot is going to weigh a lot more, and there may be a slight increase in price depending on the brand and style that you choose. Then as you move up even further, you're going to be looking at composite toe boots, which is more of a newer style of boot. It's giving you toe box protection, but you're achieving the toe box protection with a composite material as opposed to steel, which greatly lessens the overall weight of the shoe. The trade-off is typically these type of shoes cost more. So when you're looking at work boots, these are typically the things that you want to keep in mind. So what are work boots actually good for? Well, for me, I use them for almost all construction-related applications. Everything from demolition to moving materials around on a job site to general remodeling and construction. This is a very versatile boot. And the main thing that you're wanting to make sure that you can check all the boxes, and the most added and sought after bonus box is going to be your comfort level, because the comfort of the boot is going to allow you to work for longer periods of time and work more efficiently, because you're not worried about your feet beginning to ache and your arches and everything like that starting to give out on you. So enough about the work boot. Let's move on to the next type of boot, which is going to be the boot that is designed to resist water. So here we have the second type of boot, which is a duck boot, which is also known as a muck boot. These boots are designed with moisture and water repellents as their primary function, or at least one of them. Now, there is going to be some overlap between these type of boots and your work boots, because you have some work boots that are waterproof. However, sometimes you're going to be in situations where you're doing specific type of work that is going to be wet enough or nasty enough to where it's just better for you to go with a boot that is designed with moisture first. And this is that boot. I like to use these type of boots when I'm doing landscape work, where I'm going to be in thick and heavy grass, or if I'm going to be doing work outside where it's still wet from early in the morning and there's dew and everything on the ground or in the grass. I also like to use these type of boots when doing crawl space work, particularly if the crawl space does not have any type of vapor barrier laid down and it's overall moist and muddy down there and you're having to slide around. I prefer to use these type of boots. The main advantage that these boots have over a boot like this, which is also waterproof, is the fact that these clean up a lot easier. These boots are made from leather, and these boots do have a partial leather upper here, but the bottom portion in the toe box is actually made from rubber. And as you can see here, the sole is all rubber, and everything is made and kind of fused together as one piece, which makes it not only waterproof, but it also makes it a lot easier to clean up. When you're trying to clean up a boot like this, you've got a lot more crevices and indentations around the perimeter of the boot, and it makes it a lot more difficult to actually get the dirt and grime off of it after the work is done. So if you're getting into situations where you're getting into a lot of nasty types of liquids, or you're getting into a lot of mud and dirt and things like that, when you go to clean up these boots, it's a lot more difficult to get them back to looking presentable than it is to getting a boot like this to look presentable. Additionally, because these boots are leather, it is a natural material, which means that the more that you have it exposed to water and moisture like that, the more you have to be mindful of making sure that you're keeping your boots oiled and things like that to help preserve the overall lifespan of the boots. The upper on these boots is also leather, but it's a little bit more forgiving and easier to maintain, because when you're doing most types of work where you're going to be in a nasty environment, the bulk of that nastiness is going to be concentrated around the lower portion of the boot, which means that you can easily wipe off and clean up the upper portion of the boot a little bit more easy. So that covers our second type of boot. So before we move on to the next topic, there's a few things that I want to say in closing about boots. I first want to share with you all the downsides. So if you look at these two types of boots, both the muck boot and this work boot, which is a steel toe, you will notice two things really quickly off the bat that are pretty obvious. Number one, both of these shoes are relatively clunky, and they're also relatively heavy. You can't necessarily see that, but you would assume that there's a general overall amount of weight associated with a shoe of this size, and you would be correct. So both of these two factors are going to make these shoes less than ideal for certain types of work. Additionally, when you're looking at boots, boots typically have a longer break-in period than some other types of shoes. However, there are going to be certain types of boots that are coming out now that are kind of more in between, and they give you some of the best of both worlds that are going to be more flexible and easy to break in, and also going to give you more protection than a regular basic shoe. However, typically one of the trade-offs with that is going to be that the shoe is overall going to be less durable. However, they're making improvements in this type of technology every day. So let's move on to the next type of shoe, which is going to be sneakers, and we're going to start with the first pair here. So the first thing I want to say about sneakers is going to be that sneakers overall are going to be a lot more comfortable than work boots, and it's going to be a lot easier to find a pair of sneakers that is comfortable. The next thing I want to tell you about sneakers is that you're going to have to be a lot more selective with the type of projects that you take on when you're planning to wear a shoe like this, because it's going to give you overall less protection all around. The sole's going to be thinner, the overall top and toe box as well as the upper of the shoe is going to be thinner, and it's not going to provide as much stability and support as a boot either. However, there's going to be certain types of tasks that are going to be a lot more conducive to wearing sneakers than wearing boots. I prefer to wear sneakers whenever I'm going to be doing an extensive amount of ladder work, particularly if I'm going to be working alone. And one of the main reasons why I prefer sneakers is that it gives me an overall heightened level of foot sensitivity, and I'm more aware of where my feet are placed. And that's going to be a very important thing when you're going to be on a ladder. You want to always be able to feel any type of movement or shifting in the ladder whatsoever. You also want to be very light on your feet, particularly when you're going to be constantly going up and down ladders. Another area where I love to wear sneakers is going to be if I'm going to be working in an attic, particularly in a residential setting, because when you're in an attic, you have to negotiate insulation, and you've also got to negotiate the ceiling framing members. And if you miss the ceiling framing members and you don't have any type of decking up there in an attic, you can easily step through or fall through the attic and be sitting in a living room somewhere. So you have to make sure that you're able to sense and feel what you're standing on, even if you can't see it. And a lot of this is going to boil down to the placement of your toes as well as your knees and hands and chest as you're trying to crawl around and maneuver in an attic. And most boots are just not going to be cut out for doing that. And I find being able to achieve that task with a high level of success and efficiency is a lot easier to do with a sneaker. Another task that I almost exclusively wear sneakers for is going to be paintwork, especially interior paintwork. And the main reasons for that is just the overall comfort level of the shoe. In addition to just having the overall control over your foot positioning, when you're doing paint work, you're constantly going to be standing on your feet. you're going to be squatting, you may have to do some crawling, you're going to be up and down ladders, you're going to be constantly changing heights and positions, and having something that's going to be comfortable on your feet and lightweight is going to help you maintain a high level of efficiency, and you're also going to be able to limit the amount of fatigue as the day and the job continues on. And so that's one of the reasons why I prefer to wear sneakers for that type of work. As you can see, these sneakers have quite a bit of paint on them because that's pretty much what I exclusively use these shoes for now. So another thing I want to say with regards to wearing sneakers on job sites is that you typically want to avoid wearing sneakers altogether if there's any likelihood or chance that you're going to be standing on or coming in contact with sharp objects like nails and glass and metal and things like that, because these type of shoes do not do a very good job of preventing penetration through the sole, which can lead you to having to make an unexpected trip to the urgent care in order to get treatment for a puncture wound. So sneakers are going to be an excellent option for certain types of work, but not all types of work. You can also wear sneakers if you're doing certain types of carpentry. The main thing that I would say to be aware of when you're working with sneakers and you're doing carpentry work is to make sure that you're not going to be in danger of dropping things on your feet. If you're going to be running the risk of dropping 2x4s and things like that as you're working, you may want to still defer to the work boot instead of wearing a sneaker. So every job is not going to be conducive to wearing sneakers, and you need to be able to do an overall risk assessment before you decide to wear sneakers on a particular job. Sneakers are going to give you the maximum level of comfort. However, if there's going to be any risk that you're going to be coming in contact with sharp objects like nails or screws or glass or metal, and you've got any chance that you may run into those type of objects or potentially stand on them or step on them, you're going to want to avoid sneakers altogether because they're just not going to provide you enough foot protection, and you're going to want to defer to wearing a work boot just because of the overall safety factor. So before we move on to the next topic, I want to drive home one particular point with regards to sneakers, and that is sneakers are not all the same. And I've got another pair of sneakers here to help drive home that point. And if you look at these two sneakers side by side, they look relatively similar in the fact that they're athletic shoes. However, a shoe like this is more of a standard tennis shoe, which means that it's got a more of a hard form. It's got a cupped heel that has a sturdy shape to it. And it's also got protection here around the edge of the toe box, as well as rubber that comes up to the front here. Now, this is not a lot of protection, but it is more than a sneaker like this. Now, both of these tennis shoes are very, very comfortable, but the trade-off with this type of shoe is that it doesn't really have much of a shape to it, and there's no protection here around the toe area or virtually anywhere. So you don't necessarily have to even step on anything to have potential safety issues with a shoe like this, because if I put my finger in here and just move it around the inside of the shoe, you can see that there is very little protection and that it's very thin. So all you really have to do is brush up against something sharp, and you can easily injure your foot. And the same thing is going to be true if you drop something on your foot. You don't have to necessarily drop a brick or a hammer on your foot. You could drop something as lightweight as a screwdriver on your foot, and if it falls the right way, you could be potentially injured because of the overall thinness of the material that's used to make this shoe. I'm not beating up on shoes like this. This shoe is very comfortable. However, if you're going to be working on a job site where you're going to be running the risk of dropping things and things like that, I would typically avoid wearing a shoe like this, as well as if you're going to be working on a job site where you could potentially brush up against something that may be stacked on the floor like materials and things like that. You also have to keep in mind that those type of materials can also present a hazard to your toes and things like that. So something else to keep in mind, so you want to be able to evaluate the overall level of safety that that sneaker provides. Even though it's a tennis shoe, they're not all the same. Okay, so on to the next topic, which is going to be general best practices for foot safety on a job site. And this first tip is going to pertain to folks who are going to be on the job site in a management role, whether you're an owner or you are a supervisor, whatever the case may be. The first tip that I want to share with you is do not wear nice shoes on the job site. And this also pertains to workers, but it's more likely going to be something that you're going to run into if you're going to be in a management or supervisory role and you're just going to be quickly stopping by and moving on to your next stop. And the reason why I say do not wear nice shoes on a job site is because if you're wearing nice shoes on a job site and they're shoes that you care about, it's going to be very easy for you to make a decision to try to preserve the overall condition of your shoes over safety. And what I mean by that is when you go onto a job site, there may be all types of things going on. There may be people moving around materials, cutting materials. There may be materials stacked and strewn all over the place depending on the type of project that you're working on and what phase you're walking into it on. And so you always want to be able to take the path that is going to be the clearest and the safest, and you don't want to be factoring things in like how much dust is on the floor or if it's wet over here and things like that when you're trying to take a safe path. And the best way to avoid having to make those type of decisions is to wear shoes that are designed to be worn on a work site so that you can always have safety as your top priority. So that's tip number one, no nice shoes on the job site. The next tip builds on the first one and is also an excellent tip for those who are going to be in a supervisory or management role, whether you're an owner or a GC or someone who's just going to be passing through for inspections and things like that. You want to ideally keep a pair of your work shoes in the car at all times. And that builds back on the first topic, which is going to be you don't want to be wasting time or being distracted with trying to maintain your nice shoes. If you've got a good pair of work shoes in the car, you can simply change. Because I know that frequently when you're bouncing around from site to site, you may be showing up on the site, you may be coming from somewhere where your work shoe is not an appropriate look. You may be heading somewhere after you stop by that site where your work shoe is not an appropriate look. That's all fine and good, but you want to be able to be dressed appropriately when you're on the job site. And by having some work shoes in the car, you're always going to be able to be prepared to step foot on that site and be safe at all times. This next tip pertains to selecting the shoe that you're going to be wearing on the work site. Now, this is going to be good whether you're going to be performing the work or you're going to just be stopping by. If you've got shoes to select from in your wardrobe, then you want to go ahead and pinpoint which shoes those are going to be from the front end. And one of the main reasons that you want to do this is that you don't want to dog out more than one pair of shoes if you don't have to. And specifically what I mean by that is that some people are not going to have any work shoes at all, and all of their shoes are nice shoes. And if you fall into that category, then you may be in a scenario where you may have to go out and buy a pair of shoes specifically for the purpose of being able to work in or to dog out and have a shoe that you really don't care about, because you don't want to be constantly destroying a new pair of shoes if you don't have to. So if you look at my shoes that I have here, I've got 4 pairs up here. I consider all these work shoes more or less. These are steel toes, and if you see that the majority of what you see on them with regards to dust and everything like that, you don't see much paint and stuff like that on them. Mainly because they're not used for that. They're basically used for demolition and things like that. So dust is going to be the main thing that gets cleaned off of here. There's going to be a little bit of a smudge of paint on something like that, but that actually happened during demo where I came across some paint over the process of doing that, and some of it got on the boot. That's the only reason why there's paint on these. These shoes you see here, they don't have any type of paint or caulking or any other type of debris on them because they're not used for that. These are exclusively used for landscape stuff and things where I'm going to be getting my feet wet, or I can easily clean these boots off. Then you look over here at these are the rattiest of the shoes, and as you look at them, you can see that they've got paint on them, they've got all types of drywall dust and things like that are caked inside of them. These shoes are used exclusively for paint work. And then you look at these shoes, and these shoes are, even though they're not pretty anymore, they don't have a bunch of paint and staining all over them because they're just general purpose shoes that I can work in. And so that's just an example of ways that you can kind of limit the overall wear that you put on your shoes. I'm not saying that you need to have 4 different pairs of shoes to work in, particularly if you're just doing this as a one-off project. But as you get deeper into this, you may want to have different shoes for doing different things. As an example, we all can fall victim to wearing the wrong shoes or wearing nice shoes on the job site. This is a perfect example of that. These were my tennis shoes that I went to when I was going to wear some jeans and go out casually. And after wearing these on job sites accidentally multiple times, they eventually got stains and things like that on them, and they no longer serve the purpose of being my nice tennis shoes anymore, and they were downgraded and eventually made their way into the arsenal of work shoes. And so this is what can happen. Not really a big deal if this is something that you do on a regular basis, but if you're someone who doesn't always take on projects and is not always doing work, then it would be a shame for you to ruin a nice pair of tennis shoes that you like when you didn't have to. So hopefully you found this video informative. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you all in the next one.